Doug, while preparing your keynote speech at ITB Berlin convention, you came up with some very provocative hypotheses. For example, social media makes the travelers antisocial. Why that?
Well, there's a lot of social media and travel these days. It's one of the hot buzzwords. But I think it does actually make travelers more antisocial. I mean, if you can imagine for a second anyone who comes over to your house and they're sitting there, maybe you've had them for dinner, and they can't put their phone away. You know, they're sitting there, they're checking Facebook, they're texting people, and you're waiting for them to just put down their phone and engage with you and have a conversation. And there's a lot of these people who are hyper-connected, who are addicted to their phones, who are addicted to being online into this, community, and they continue that way and are enabled to do so with Wi-Fi and high-speed internet connections while they're traveling. And there's some times for that. Maybe you want to upload some travel pictures. But for the most part, people need to learn how to disconnect. And that is especially true when they're traveling. I remember being in a youth hostel when I was traveling, and it was like the lobby was this fantastic place where you met travelers from all over the world. And I was in one recently, and there was like 30 people in the lobby, and almost all of them were sitting there just checking their phones and updating with their iPads and their laptops and checking this and that. And it seemed like such an amazing, sad, missed opportunity to act, that social travel, this sort of social media, was keeping these travelers from being social. It was this amazing paradox.
And Doug, another hypothesis was, responsible tourism acts irresponsibly. Why that?
Responsible tourism has it's sort of a loaded word in a way. I mean, it can mean so much. It can mean everything from, use your towel twice before you drop it on the floor in the bathroom hotel so that they won't wash it quite as often, which of course will save the hotel a little bit of money as well. It can also mean sort of profound ecotourism and having a lot of respect and preserving local cultures. And it's hard to know what level you're talking about. And sort of like with ecotourism, it's just like a label that a lot of tour operators will slap onto the side of a minivan or use, to market their tourism organization. You might even see, eco baby seal hunting. I mean, there's no governing body to say, no, you can't use eco or you can't use responsible tourism. So that means that there are going to be people that are going to abuse it, sadly. And I think that it's, when I hear about it, especially when it's in regard to sort of preserving local cultures, I wonder, who have they spoken to? I remember being in Hoi An, Vietnam, long time ago, we're talking about 15, 20 years ago or something, when it was just getting started. It probably had sort of the backpacker scene for a couple of years, 2 years. And I was speaking to a waitress in one of the cafes, and I said, what do you make of this? Do you like this tourism? And she said, no, we people who work here, we're not crazy about it. There's a few people who own most of the restaurants and most of the hotels, and they love it, and they're making tons of money. But for the rest of us, I think we really thought life was a lot better before. And, I mean, not everyone's going to feel that way, but when they say people get, when tourist operators say, we were invited in with tourism, who did they talk to? Did they talk to everybody? Did they have a town hall meeting? Or did they just talk to the town mayor, the developer, and the people who want the money? And then even the people who aren't those ownership people, did they educate them? Did an NGO come in and say, look, here's 6 different rough ways this could play out if you decide to go the tourism route. It could look like this, and there's plenty of examples. They could show them a little glimpse into their possible futures and then let them decide if that's what they want. And then on the other side of that, you've also got the media. You've got the Guardian and the New York Times and just about every other piece of the media who talk about responsible tourism in glowing terms. They make it sound like it's a good thing. And in these same publications, you'll see on their front pages, they'll put these kind of quaint and undiscovered little villages, and they romanticize them. And the next thing you know, of course, that leads to tons of tourists, or at least the start of tons of tourists, showing up in these small villages, which is going to greatly impact tourism. And they did this without ever consulting the locals. It's like on the other side of the globe, they are affecting responsible tourism, while at the same time preaching that it's a good thing. So there's a lot of paradoxes, and I think people haven't taken a close look at that.
Doug, what other challenges in the area of marketing and distribution is the industry facing at the moment and in the future?
Last year, if you attended the presentation last year, I spoke about how destinations are trying to make themselves look really appealing, and in doing that, they'll show sort of extremely flattering pictures. You know, they'll put a rainbow over their town. Of course, there has been a rainbow there at some point, but unless they've got a rainbow machine and can recreate that experience for every tourist that comes by, the people who saw the rainbow in the brochure and went there and don't see a rainbow, they're bound to be a little disappointed because real life doesn't live up to the expectation of the brochure. Now, this year, I kind of want to jump into something else. I think it's going to be a little bit polemic, and I want to call it smart crowd limits. Now, this is something that we already do, and we do it on airplanes. You know, you only sell as many seats as you can put people. It's like they don't put a person on your lap, at least not yet. I don't know if maybe Ryanair's got plans. And the other thing is that they don't put extra people in your hotel room. There are fire code violations probably at the top of the Eiffel Tower. When it gets to a certain limit, they probably cut it off and say, okay, we've got a full house up there, you can't put it. But if you go to some of these sites, if you go under the Eiffel Tower, if you go on almost any tourist destination that's sort of outside, there's no limit. It can have 2 million people there and just be packed like New Year's Eve in Times Square. And at that point, you know, no one's having a great experience. No one's having an authentic, interesting experience. So the question is, how do you set limits so that the people who are there maximize their experience? And I think that's what this is really about. I mean, if you take 2,000 eco-tourists, responsible eco-tourists, and you drop them or you bus them into some little tiny town, well, it still kind of steamrollers the local culture. No matter how sensitive they are, there's something with the sheer numbers of people who are coming in. And that's something that I think the industry needs to take a much closer look at. Because as we look down the road of what's happening, when the Chinese and the Indians and the Thais start traveling in the same kind of numbers, percentages that Germans and Englishmen travel, I mean, it's going to be an awfully crowded planet soon. And so we need to sort of get out ahead of the curve and start to make some preemptive fixes.
Doug, countries are competing for the same tourist. They are getting more advanced with their social media marketing and have complex and expensive ad campaigns. What about the product? Are they paying attention to that?
Yeah, it's typically the product that does get neglected. I mean, as you know, DMOs, destination marketing organizations, are primarily aimed at marketing. They really should, I'm not the first person to say this, but they should be destination management organizations. The thing is, the city, the council, the little village, they need an advocate for tourists, for tourism. Someone who can say, you know, maybe we don't need 15 McDonald's in the city center. Tourists aren't going to really think that's great. It adds to the culture of the place that makes it unique. And that's sort of what's happening right now as you look around, especially the major international cities around the world. They're becoming homogenized. They've all got a Disney store and a Gap and an H&M, and they've got Baskin Robbins and Haagen-Dazs and the whole, you know, Hilton, Sheraton, the whole thing. They're looking more and more alike. So it's going to become a greater emphasis on making those products unique. It's becoming more and more a challenge for the people who put together the brochures. They're trying to show these unique cities and without showing these McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chickens and Pizza Huts everywhere. So it's a challenge. And so, you know, UNESCO can't make every fire hydrant and unique lamppost a World Heritage item. It's up to the local cities in villages and countries to do that work. And they have to say, look, this stuff's worth preserving. It's unique. It's what sets us apart. And we need to do more stuff, in fact, in that direction, not less.
Doug, thank you very much for that very interesting interview.
Yeah, Roland, let me just give a birthday shout to ITB. 10 years, that's fantastic. You're put together an amazing conference. Every year when I walk around, I'm just sort of astounded at the incredible booths, and I always learn a lot of stuff listening to these lectures, and I'm really happy to be a part of this, and I hope to see a lot of you there at this year's presentation. I've got a lot of fun stuff I'm putting together. It's going to be a good show.